In this world, when a person is born, they are bestowed with a profession by the God of light and a skill by the God of darkness. If you receive a profession that matches your skill, you can train and acquire greater potential for advancement. However, one can only receive a single profession in their lifetime. In other words, when someone is born, their fate is already unfairly sealed. Ein, who was given the profession of an appraiser, is always looked down upon by others. In this role, when entering dungeons, he has to undertake grueling tasks. Jolene, a member of Ein's group, watches as their teammate Zoid laughs and remarks that compared to them, Ein is just trash. Ein secretly curses those with superior professions for acting like they rule the world. Professions are categorized into 3 types. Combat-capable professions like swordsmen and magicians are considered elite. Professions like farmers and miners, lacking such abilities, are referred to as common. Commoners often inherit their professions from their parents. Since professions are hereditary, it's likely that a farmer's child will also become a farmer. These children learn similar skills to their parents, following in the family footsteps for a peaceful life. However, there's another path for these children, becoming adventurers. Adventurers earn a living by accepting missions to slay monsters and then harvesting useful materials from them. The main goal of the job is to discover valuable items and change their fortunes overnight. Ein is forced to become an adventurer because his parents died when he was very young, and the family business came to an end. Currently, inside the dungeon, Zoid, after killing a monster, scolds Ein for being too slow in appraising. He continues to berate Ein, claiming that if it weren't for a genius like him, Ein wouldn't be able to kill any monster. Jolene, standing by, says the two of them risked their lives to protect Ein, so he should be more grateful to them. Ein resignedly accepts their words as truth. All he can do is pick up monster corpses, destined to scavenge through trash for life. Regardless of what they say, scavenging through trash is all Ein can do to survive. On their way out, Zoid suddenly exclaims that they are in luck, having found the corpse of a dungeon hound killed by someone else. Ein was not blinded by materialism and felt something odd about the dungeon hound's corpse. It didn't seem to belong there. Both Zoid and Jolene cheerfully approached the corpse, only to discover another one. Ein, increasingly fearful, reminded them that this path wasn't on the map. Zoid, refusing to listen to Ein's warnings, threatened to fire him and withhold his pay if he didn't comply. Ein, knowing no one else would accept someone with his useless profession, had been overjoyed when he joined the group. With no other choice, he reluctantly followed them deeper inside. They were greeted by a horde of dead dungeon hounds and another pack, fierce and bloodthirsty, eyeing the trio. Ein realized that this was the aftermath of a battle for food. The others decided to paralyze Ein and leave him behind as they escaped. Jolene, before leaving, coldly stated she didn't want to die. Zoid mocked Ein, saying the paralysis wouldn't last long, maybe his grandparents would arrive in time to save him. Despite Ein's protests, they didn't turn back and even blocked the only exit. Ein, refusing to die, ran in the opposite direction and found himself at the edge of an abyss. Thinking he'd rather die on his own terms, he jumped. Incredibly, the next morning, Ein woke up unharmed beneath a tree. He guessed he had fallen onto this tree but miraculously wasn't injured. At that moment, the wheel of fate began to turn for him. Below the abyss stood a majestic ancient tree, and Ein's life was about to begin anew here. Ein used his appraisal skill to check the water he was sitting near. He discovered it was Yggdrasil's dew, a restorative item capable of healing all wounds and diseases. Yggdrasil, of which only 9 exist in the world, provides a vast amount of mana globally and can grow rapidly without sunlight. Ein marveled at the discovery of a real Yggdrasil. In the world he knew, a Yggdrasil had existed but was believed to have withered long ago. However, even after its withering, mana continued to be produced. To uncover the reason, many extensive searches were conducted, but despite relentless efforts, it remained undiscovered. Ein was astonished to find the Yggdrasil hidden in a cave for such a long time. He approached and touched the tree, grateful for being saved by it. After touching it, everything around him began to shake, which he initially thought was his imagination. Currently, Ein had no idea how to return to the surface. However, it seemed there were no monsters in this area. Pessimistically, Ein assumed he wouldn't be rescued, especially not by those who used him as bait. Eventually, he decided that if he had to die of starvation here, so be it. He thanked the tree for saving his life and then turned to leave. The area was still uncharted by the association, so I knew it could be home to monsters far more dangerous than hellhounds. He told himself to stay calm, despite being terrified, and trust in his own abilities. After a large detour, Ein realized there were fewer monsters than he expected. Just as he thought he might escape, he heard someone crying for help not far away. Ein assessed that the creature attacking the person was a gremlin, monster that lived in labyrinths, with low attack power but high speed. It used scythes to attack its prey. Terrified, Ein realized this monster was way out of his league. It turned its attention to him after dealing with the other person. Ein was attacked and, despite knowing about the enemy, he had no strength to fight back. Suddenly, the gremlin stopped its attack, and Ein, bewildered, watched as a death bear approached, a creature powerful enough to shatter the labyrinth itself. With a single blow, it defeated its opponent. Ein, thrown against the wall by the bear, couldn't see anything. Injured and blinded, he then heard a woman's voice. A beautiful woman appeared and attacked the bear, saying she was asked to help and it wasn't common for her to transport people. After a while, Ein's vision returned, and he saw the beautiful girl in front of him. The voice he had heard earlier, now identified as the woman's, told him he better use tea and be grateful to her daughter for the rest of his life. Ein looked at them, confused about what had happened, as he was on the brink of death and had lost his sight just moments ago. After Ein finished his tea, the woman revealed that she was helping him on behalf of her daughter, Yuri, whom Ein thanked. He asked if she was Yuri's mother, and she replied that her name was Ursula, and she could be considered Yuri's mother. She was also the guardian of Yggdrasil. Her duty was to protect Yuri, who was the Yggdrasil itself, and to watch over the 9 Yggdrasils worldwide to ensure peace. Ursula explained to Ein, simplifying for his understanding, that Yuri was actually the soul of Yggdrasil. Ein, in awe, repeated the revelation, commenting on Yuri's beauty. Ursula scolded him, warning him not to look at her daughter, and even hit him on the head. Ein then asked how his eyes, injured by the death bear, recovered so quickly. Ursula explained that Yuri used a part of her power to create an artificial soul eye for him. She also mentioned that his hand and fingers were reattached by Yuri. Ursula urged Ein to be grateful to her daughter, who had infused part of her power into his eye for better vision, otherwise, she wouldn't have bothered to help a human like him. Ein, moved, asked Yuri why she helped him so much. Yuri shyly replied it was because he thanked her. She mentioned that although rare, others have fallen down here, but upon realizing she was Yggdrasil, they broke her branches and plucked her leaves without hesitation. Ursula angrily cursed those people, noting that Ein's words had made Yuri extremely happy. Ein approached Yuri to thank her again, calling her his savior. Ursula, annoyed, pulled Ein away from her daughter and told him it was time to leave since he had been saved. Yuri, looking like she was about to cry, stopped Ursula. She argued that the outside world was too dangerous for Ein, and if he left, he would surely die. Ein knew she was right, considering the S-level monsters in the dungeon. If he returned to the dungeon, death would be imminent. Ursula told Yuri that as a guardian, she couldn't go far from Yuri and definitely couldn't escort Ein out of there. Although Ursula had teleportation magic, she couldn't use it in the labyrinth. Hearing this, Yuri burst into tears, leaving Ursula unsure of what to do. She consoled her daughter, saying she wouldn't be happy if Yuri cried. Touched by her daughter's tears, Ursula agreed to help Ein escape. Since it had come to this, she decided to train him. Ursula announced that she would train Ein until he was strong enough to leave. Yuri, stopping her tears, hugged her mother and repeatedly thanked her. Ursula, feeling helpless against her daughter's wishes, didn't refuse. She told Ein to hurry and bow in gratitude to her daughter. Ursula loudly declared that Ein would be trained by the oldest and strongest sage. She warned him that if he dared to slack off or run away, she would beat him to death. Ein, with determination, loudly expressed his reliance on her and silently vowed to survive and leave this place. Ursula's training for Ein started immediately. Ein, looking down the dark path, felt his resolve waning. He fearfully asked Ursula if she was serious about starting his training in actual combat. Ursula, unusually patient, explained that if he only sat and learned theory, it would take a lifetime to escape. She chose a shortcut for Ein, urging him to see the path ahead clearly. Ein looked into the pitch-black tunnel and said he couldn't see anything. Ursula, losing patience, scolded him for his stupidity. She reminded him whose eyes he received. She yelled that Ein was blessed with a piece of Yggdrasil's core, the main energy source of the tree, which Yuri had given to him. Ursula told Ein that his current eyes were vastly different from an hour ago, and his vision must have improved. Despite her explanation, Ein didn't feel any difference. Ursula continued, saying it was because he hadn't realized the full power of the soul eye. She instructed him to start by being extremely vigilant. Ein closed his eyes, recalling the feeling of being torn by the bear's claws, trapped in a world of darkness. However, Yuri brought light into Ein's dark world. Everything he could and would receive was thanks to the light Yuri bestowed upon him. Ein felt warmth in his eyes, and when he opened them again, everything had changed. He exclaimed in surprise, asking Ursula what had happened, as the cave, previously pitch dark, was now as bright as day. Ursula suggested he might have gotten used to his new eyes and declared it was time to start training. Ein was again terrified when Ursula brought forth a gremlin, wondering what he should do. Ursula commanded him to dodge all the creature's attacks, marking the first step of his training. Ein doubted his ability to dodge with such speed. Ursula reminded him of his skill as an appraiser, and that the soul eye was not like normal human eyes. Skeptical, Ein used his appraisal skill on the gremlin, instantly perceiving its attack patterns. It was aiming for his right ear with a scythe at high speed. Caught off guard by his success, Ein was hit by the gremlin. Ursula, seeing Ein in pain, said that he couldn't compare the soul eye to mortal eyes, now he could appraise more than before. After saying this, she sat beside him and poured medicine into his mouth, laughing that training to death was the best way to learn. She assured him that no matter how close to death he got, he would be healed. Ein, recovering from his injuries, wondered if this was too harsh. Ursula summoned the gremlin again, giving Ein no time for idle talk. Ein understood the creature's target but realized he needed to anticipate the timing of its attacks. He remembered that he was looking through a soul eye and, as Ursula said, couldn't treat it like a normal eye. He could appraise it, even appraise the timing of its attacks. Finally, Ein managed to perceive the gremlin's 5-second attack sequence. His next task was to accurately dodge its attacks. He joyfully evaded the gremlin, avoiding an attack for the first time from an S-level beast. Ein vowed to himself to become the world's best at dodging. From that hellish day, he grew increasingly confident about escaping from this place. After a week of training, Ein could easily see the movements of the gremlin. He asked Ursula if she saw that he had mastered dodging. She was satisfied and said it was time to move on to the next step, attempting to kill the gremlin. Ein was shocked, reminding her that his profession didn't include combat skills. Ursula asked if he was stupid, saying the training would make him stronger without needing skills. Ein wondered how he could fight without a weapon. Ursula presented a wooden sword made from a branch of Yggdrasil. Previously, Yuri had asked her mother to give it to Ein, which had surprised Ursula, especially since the branch was special. Yuri had said she wanted to help Ein as much as possible. Ursula loudly told Ein that Yuri had endured pain to break off that branch for him, threatening to punish him if he broke it. Seeing Ein's clumsy attempts with the sword, Ursula scorned him, saying that even if he knew when the enemy would attack, with his current skill, he would never hit it. However, when Ein asked what to do, she didn't answer. Fighting alone for a while, Ein realized the enemy could also read his movements. To overcome this, he needed to read its movements too. Ein forced himself to think beyond human limits, as the eyes of the soul were entirely different from normal eyes. Soon after, he discovered that by combining the soul eye and his appraisal skill, he could see far beyond a normal human's vision. The gremlin's movements seemed like a slow-motion film to him. Ein rejoiced at defeating an S-level monster. Ursula approached, scolding him that it was too early to celebrate and not to get arrogant over a single success. She ordered Ein to kill all the monsters in the area. After a while, the ground was littered with gremlin corpses. Ein asked Ursula how she felt, thinking he had become proficient in counterattacking. Ursula calmly told Ein that it was only possible because of his soul eye. Ursula wanted Ein to use the corpses of the gremlins to appraise their techniques and make them his own. Appraisal allowed him to understand all information about an opponent. In other words, it let him transform all information about an opponent into his own knowledge, even turning it into his personal experience. Ein followed Ursula's instructions but ended up on the ground, crying in pain. Ursula looked at him and said that although he could copy the monster's movements, his frail body couldn't keep up. She yelled at him to listen carefully. His only task now was to train his body to match the gremlin's speed. Following her advice, Ein trained relentlessly until his muscles strengthened. Finally, he achieved extraordinary physical strength after long days of training. The training became increasingly harsh over time. During a session, Ein approached Ursula with a thought. He wondered if he could copy abilities from stronger monsters like the death bear to become more powerful. Ursula praised him for his improved thinking but reminded him of the pain he endured copying the gremlin's abilities. When copying an ability, he would be incapacitated for a while. Ein, puzzled, asked what if he was attacked by the bear during that time. Ursula affirmed that was why he needed to ensure he wasn't attacked, implying that he had to kill the bear first. However, with Ein's current strength, that was impossible. Ursula, with a grim face, made a decision. She felt terrible but decided to grant Ein a special ability she possessed for him to copy. Ein, terrified by Ursula's expression, knew it wouldn't be easy. While he was still pondering, Ursula hit him with a mysterious power. Ein's hair immediately puffed up and curled like a bird's nest, and he cried out, begging her to spare his hair and asking if it could be restored. Ursula calmly said his overreaction to something as trivial as hair was disappointing. She then explained that the technique she used was the void mind technique. It is a skill that can only be used when chanting or using magic. Normally, using magic takes a lot of time, making one extremely passive in combat. Ein said it would be amazing to use magic without needing to chant. Ursula praised him for understanding quickly and urged him to copy the void mind technique and fireball spell. Ein did as instructed but was injured by Ursula's magical power. Somehow, he could only copy the void mind technique. Ursula realized this and then unleashed several fireballs at Ein. Suppressing his pain, Ein began to copy. Ursula rarely complimented him, but finally, he managed to copy an offensive technique. Despite this, Ursula still had many techniques for him to copy, and he had to take it step by step. Ein skeptically asked Ursula why she was suddenly treating him well. Ursula retorted, asking what he meant by his current expression, saying it was because Yuri wanted him to become stronger quickly. Ursula thought to herself that she wasn't doing this just to relieve stress. She then ordered Ein to stand up and continue copying her wind magic. Ein was happy to copy these spells but wondered if he was becoming a monster. He doubted his ability to survive this training. It had been 5 days since the magic copying course began. After firing a fireball, Ein collapsed, exhausted, saying he couldn't take it anymore. Ursula scornfully laughed at his weakness, having only shot 15 fireballs. She said that even if he copied her magic, with his limited mana, he couldn't do much. Magic usage requires mana, and the amount varies based on one's profession. Ein's profession wasn't related to magic, so he had very little mana. Fortunately, Yuri brought Ein a drop of Yggdrasil. It not only restored energy but also increased his limits. Ursula pulled her daughter away from Ein, yelling that even with extra energy, including that from Yggdrasil, his mana wouldn't increase. Ursula continued to order Ein to use magic until he could see his ancestors, implying that he needed to deplete his mana to the maximum. This way, when he drank the Yggdrasil drop, it would increase even more. But the problem was that increasing his mana limit made him so tired he couldn't stand up. Ursula, pointing angrily at Ein, scolded him for being foolish, asking if he thought he could defeat the death bear with such weak strength. She loudly announced she would train him until he could shoot 1,000 fireballs. Ein, terrified, looked at Yuri, hoping she would ask her mother to give him a break. This time, Yuri didn't intervene but wished them luck, thinking that if Ein didn't train, he wouldn't become stronger. Ein was frightened at the thought of casting 1,000 fireballs, knowing the immense amount of mana it would require. Yuri, understanding his fear, assured him it wasn't much and that he needed to prepare thoroughly. Ursula, satisfied, asked Ein if he heard her daughter and instructed him to use some intermediate-level magic and expend all his mana in one go. Ein hesitated, aware of the consequences of using high-level magic. Ursula, growing impatient, demanded to know if he was going to do it or not. Ein had no choice but to comply with Ursula's wishes. Fortunately, Yuri was there to restore him. Thus, Ursula's training continued.